We're getting back on track here with Kathryn and Emily, but as you know, we won't stay there for long because this is the Going Off Track podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Going Off Track podcast. I'm Kathryn, that's Emily, and Saudi Arabia was a really interesting race. Sort of.
LOL. I mean, I would say big things happened, but, it wasn't an exciting race. We have movement in drivers' championship standings. That's exciting. We have new, possible rivalries. That's exciting. But was the race in and of itself exciting?
No. ...
But
so I remember distinctly thinking when I was watching FP2 on Friday morning, and I remember thinking, oh, this is why I hate this race, and this is why this race should be first off the calendar. This is the 5th year of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, for the record, and I do not think it was one for the record books, even though we did have some notable things that Oscar did. And I also feel like this was Oscar's first win that wasn't, I would say that it wasn't overshadowed for the first time in his career, that he got a win that wasn't entirely overshadowed. Yes, there was drama, but not drama that negatively impacted Oscar.
No, I think that's fair. But, I think that's just how his career is going to be until he, wins a driver's championship. And because he's just such a laid-back guy and so easygoing. He's not one of these big personalities on the grid. He's not a Daniel Ricciardo. He's not a Max Verstappen. And I think it just is what it is. Now, I think it's really interesting, the dichotomy between him and his teammate. Because if Lando's win was overshadowed, Lando would throw a pity party and be pissed.
Yep.
Whereas Oscar's head down, on to the next, let's just keep going. But I don't know, I think it's interesting. I feel like in sports in general, and that's inclusive of F1, you have these big characters, these huge personalities, and they're the stars. That's who the fans gravitate towards, that's where the cameras gravitate towards. And Oscar just, to me, doesn't fit that mold. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's just really interesting to see. So
yeah, I agree. He's so, stop me if you've heard this one before, but he's the new Kimi Räikkönen, except he, unlike Kimi Räikkönen, who, put on the impression of, I don't want to be here, I just want to be racing, Oscar's happy to do the things and, be a part of the extraneous, non-racy stuff, but he's still, when he's in the car, he's I'm just here to race. That's all I care about. I'm here to race and to go and to put my best performance out on the track.
No, I think that's a good comparison, besides, Kimi and all of his one-line zingers. But,
right.
Oscar's coming around. Oscar does have a personality. I feel like we're painting him as, a cardboard box. Very great driver. He is funny, but he just, kind of keeps to himself, and he's a little quiet, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's him just being so focused on racing, and him just being I'm here to race. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, and I think a little bit is because we sometimes forget, this is his 3rd season in Formula One.
He's so young. He's so young.
But he also has so much to prove because of the mess that brought him to Formula One or to his Formula One seat in the first place. Everything that happened with his exit to Alpine, the way McLaren, not to say bent over backwards, but McLaren did have to navigate, coming to an agreement to release Danny Ricciardo so that there would be a seat available for Oscar. And it was really kind of not overshadowed, but it kind of went under the radar that he had something to prove to be I deserved this seat in the McLaren. And then of course in 2023 the McLaren was bad, really bad, so it didn't really matter. But he's proving that he has a place in the Formula One grid, and that he is a really, there's a reason why McLaren bent over backwards and, did the entire song and dance to get him out of Alpine's clutches.
And I really like how he's an under the radar guy. One of my friends texted me and they're wait, Oscar's leading the championship. And I'm
yeah.
He's won, 3 races this year?
Mm-hmm.
And this is our 5th race. Like, but that's the thing. He's just, everything is overshadowed. But there he is. If I may make a comparison that we make, he's like the Mercedes of points.
Yes.
Like, he's just like sneakily getting all of these points, and look at that. He's leading the Drivers' Championship. So
yeah, and this is exactly where we, and when I say we, I mean you and I, kind of really expected him to be, and expected him to get to a point relatively quickly. And one of the things that we were talking about during the race was like, how is McLaren going to screw over Oscar to put this in favor of Lando?
God,
they better not do that. Well, and they didn't until he said something.
I mean, they kept Lando out there with, ahead of Piastri, which is fine. He had to pit. But the dirty air, and like you said, Oscar had to say something, and he sounded more like firm in his words than I've ever heard him before. Like, yeah, well, if I didn't have all this dirty air, I'd be doing a lot better. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that on the radio. But no, I mean, I want to go back to when we first started doing this podcast, maybe 2023, maybe 2024, but we predicted Oscar will win a Drivers' Championship and Lando never will. Or Oscar will win before Lando. And I know we're, putting the cart in front of the horse here, but
it's very early.
But he's had a really good season so far, even if it's only 5 races. Granted, the car has to keep up. The team has to not screw him with strategy. But this is what you would expect to see out of a
contender.
A contender. And I think it's going to get sticky because McLaren's convinced that they have 2 contenders, which maybe they do. But like we've also said, Oscar is a really good driver in a really good car. And Lando is a lucky driver with a good engineer and a good car. So, like, it's very different when you look at them. So, yeah, I don't know.
And to speak to Lando really quick, and Lando did have a good recovery drive, but number one, Lando apparently, like, it was kind of lost on me until I heard this on the broadcast, but Lando has kind of messed up 3 of the 5 qualifying sessions this year. I'm not counting the sprint qualifying, but like, that's a lot. And I think Oscar has kind of messed up 1, maybe 2. So they're kind of balanced, but the more you have these qualifying incidents in a season like this, the more that's going to impact you. Where Lando did not end up on the podium, he got stuck behind a Ferrari that is not fast, certainly not fast on 1 lap, but I mean, Charles managed to wake up the latter half of the race in that second stint. And then also to speak on Lando's race engineer, Will Joseph, but that really all came to play when he was kind of fighting with Lewis. And it was, he kept trying to overtake Lewis in the exact wrong spots until Will Joseph took over and basically, I'm not saying he told Lando what to do, but he advised Lando on how to make that overtake stick. And that is something that you have drivers like Max, you have drivers like Oscar, you have drivers like Lewis who don't need that same support. That Oscar, it's great that he has it. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that he has it, but he needs it.
Yeah. There's a difference. And I think I am hopeful that this weekend goes to show McLaren, like, Oscar is a contender, is the better contender, and they need to, like, throw everything behind Oscar. I mean, granted, they won't because they're McLaren and Zach just, like, loves Lando, but I don't know. But here's the other side of it too, Kathryn, that's really hard. Lando did drive well today. He crashed in quali, so he started at P10. He ended up P4.
Yeah.
Like, he made up a lot of space. He did have a good drive.
That's a drive you see out of somebody who is a champion. Lewis has done that drive. Max has done that drive.
Well, but Lewis and Max also make that drive and land on the podium. So, like, that is the difference.
That is the yes and to your point of backing Oscar over Lando. I would also say it is a little early because this is race 5. We have 19 more race weekends to go, including a bunch of sprint weekends that bring in a ton of points. So it's not to say that now that Lando has lost the championship lead, that it's a done deal. I think it is.
Cut him loose.
But but there's always an opportunity for him to, make up some paces, make up some, get some points, take some points away from Oscar.
No, I know. And I hear what you're saying, and logically, yes, that makes sense. But I'm just like,
it's over. It's done.
Full
Stop
steam
the count.
ahead. Full steam ahead. We're only supporting Oscar.
I mean, we are only supporting. Like, Lando has as we know, and I don't think I've been as emphatic about it on the podcast as I have been in our DMs. But like, Lando has become less and less of my favorite driver, especially over the last year.
Yeah. Mid-20, I think it was Miami last year that really did me in when he finally won.
Miami was fine.
I was so excited for him, but then like it was the next race and he was like throwing a pity party because he got P2, and I'm like, sweet baby Lando, that's not how this works.
Yeah, I was like, you've won one race. Wait till you don't get treated like a champion when you won one race, and that is something that he still does now, even though he's still not a champion.
How many has
yet.
Oscar won? Like, that's the other thing.
5?
Everyone's like, oh, Lando finally got his first win. Well, so did Oscar, and Oscar won sprint. Like Oscar, Anyways.
But Lando took longer, and Lando set a record of most podiums without a win. In Formula One. So
all
like
of these, okay, I just want to put a pin in this really quickly. So all of these like extremely depressing stats of F1 drivers, a la Stroll,
Lance Stroll, those Q1 exits.
Yeah, it's like love and appreciate the statistician who's like, how depressing can we get with our stats here? But like, I also feel like it's so unnecessary to keep throwing out all of these poor stats. Like, I'm so glad we've just stopped talking about Nico Hülkenberg and like never making it to a podium, because that poor man, one, will never see a podium, and two, has been in Formula One racing for so long.
Yeah.
But like, it kills me every single time I see one of these like depressing "you suck" stats.
But conversely, this keeps Aston Martin in the news, whereas Aston Martin hasn't done squat to be relevant this season, because they're doing what Haas did in 2022, where Haas was like, we're done with this generation.
They're sandbagging. They're like, we're over it. We don't care.
We're waiting for the newie car. Is it 2026 yet? I am sure Lance, and also maybe extension Fernando, are calling up Lawrence and is like, so how is time travel technology? Have we perfected it yet? Can we move forward into the future?
But Daddy, I want it now. Like, literally, that is what I imagine. It's like Lance Stroll is just, he wants his golden goose egg, and that is the newie car, and he wants it now.
Yeah.
God, that was such a good...
That was really good. And like this is putting so much pressure on the newie car. It's like everyone's just like chilling. We're working on our new car, and newie's like literally has a room to sleep in at the factory.
Well, I also think it's funny where they're like, this isn't his car. He will not be touching this car. Don't worry, it's not his car. Like 2026 will be the car.
Nothing to do with the newie car, with the 2025 car.
Not my monkey, not my zoo. I don't think anyone wants to be part of that zoo right now, but anyways, okay, so yeah, basically the only exciting thing for me was that Oscar is now leading the championship. It's the first time in like forever that an Aussie has led the championship, which is really exciting.
15 years. That's a lot of years. And the last one to do it is his manager. Yeah, I love how connected F1 is. For full circle, also side note to full circle, but I met Guesty Bestie the year that an Aussie led the championship in 2010. That was when Guesty Bestie and I met. Look at that. Yes. Yeah, it was really exciting. And then also, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, and like this is coming out of my mouth, but it's exciting to see Max fight for races and points. Like, I think their strategy with qualifying was brilliant and so amazing. So good. Like, and people were pissed about it, and I'm like, hey, if they're working within the rules, there's nothing that says you can't do this. Sorry, GP's a genius. Yeah, sorry he's a genius, and sorry you didn't think about it, but like, tough cookies. And love that he got pole. I know he ended up in P2, but I still think he drove a really good race, considering he had a 5-second time penalty, which like we're not even going to talk about because
it's so infuriating what happened.
I do have a couple of things that I want to say.
Just kidding, we will talk about it.
So sorry, here's the thing. And I do think that I think that Max probably would have given the place back had there not been that red flag, or not the red flag,
Agreed.
but the safety car. So I think that put in a wrinkle where Red Bull really didn't have a choice but to say, sorry, we're just going to stick it out in front. So, but the other thing is, I don't think Max would have been able to overtake Oscar even if he did give the place back.
I agree.
I agree. The only way Max was going to win that race was if Max raced clean and stayed in the front. He raced clean for 99.9% of the race, but did not stay in front. And so I think that that's where it's unfortunate. And there's some question of like, was it a racing incident? Why wasn't it treated like a first lap, first corner, whatever? But Oscar had the corner, and this is coming from the Red Bull fan. Oscar had the corner. It makes sense that Max got that penalty. So Max is angsting over it because Max wants to be a winner. But I think that Red Bull, with the way Red Bull is always like, oh my God, the car is terrible. We can't do anything with this car. We're waiting for upgrades. P2 is a solid performance, especially when you consider that Yuki didn't race.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad for Max. He's just having to really carry this whole team again.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, no, I think it was a solid drive for Max. And I personally like when Max drives angry and when he like, drives to have to prove a point and like really has to try. One, because it's nice for him to have competition after like several seasons of not having competition. But two, it just goes to show like how good of a driver he actually is. And if I am Oscar or Lando or, George, if I'm delusional, I want to be the best and beat the best. So like Max, I feel like the last few seasons, he's just cruised off into the sunset and beat people by 30 points or 30 seconds. And like, that's not fun. And you're not truly like, yes, you're winning, but are you really winning against the toughest competition? Like, you have to say yes because only so many people have a seat, but it's not a challenge. Like, to me, winning the Drivers' Championship would be so much more rewarding and mean so much if it, like, is actually competitive a la 2021. I think that is probably the best championship he'll ever win, or even a driver will ever win. Like, that was an incredible...
I would say yes, controversy aside, yes, because, of course... No, Michael, no, that was so not right. But and it also kind of reminds me of 2016 when Nico Rosberg managed to beat Lewis Hamilton in equal machinery, which also had a little bit of not the same controversy as, say, Max and Lewis, but it had some similar inter-team controversy that also that totally tracks and totally makes sense. And the thing about Max is Max knew what he needed to do in order to maintain his position on track and just wasn't able to do that. He needed a bigger gap to get out ahead, and he couldn't do it with the car and the way that the Red Bull eats up those tires. Like, he did everything he could, and it ended up being about 2.5 seconds that definitely comes into play with that penalty. But still, Max lost it because Oscar had the better start of the race, because had Max had a better start, and this is a Max that we haven't usually seen this last year or so, because Max has gotten so much better with his starts. Max used to be terrible. I don't know if you remember, but Max used to be a terrible off the line. And so the fact that Max, he lost it when he lost turn one. And that sucks, and he was unhappy with it, and it's totally fair that he wasn't happy with it, and he was like the sad guy in the corner of the cool down room, but it's not a bad thing to have that happen to him.
No, but I think, again, it just goes to show how good of a driver he is, because if you put like Lando in that position with a 5-second penalty, he's not coming back.
Yeah.
And but that's even equal machinery with Oscar. But I think, let's just throw Max a 5-second penalty every race and just see how it turns out. Honestly, though, because he makes it up. He's such a good driver. And this isn't me being like, I am Max's number one fan. I just love the competitiveness and how good this is all getting. And just to show that, the drivers' championship standings are insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oscar jumped from P3 to P1. He has 10 points ahead of Lando, and Lando only has 2 points ahead of Max. So it would not surprise me if, and obviously we have 19 more races and a bunch of sprints, but it would not surprise me to see in the top 3 an Oscar, Max, Lando driver standings podium.
Oh, I agree. I know there's only 12 points between Oscar and Max. That's the fight I'm more interested in, especially with sprints, because they both do really well in sprints. Too early prediction from Emily, but I think the drivers' championship is honestly going to come down to the last race between Oscar and Max.
Yeah, I fully agree. Sorry, Lando, you're going to be on the fringes, but I do think that's where that's going to be, and who knows, George might even steal some sneaky points and end up pushing Lando.
Don't even give him that much credit. But no, but you're right, because I feel like Lando gets hot and then he will DNF for absolutely no reason, and those are the races where Mercedes gets the sneaky points.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the top 5 in the standings now, we talked about Oscar through Max, but George is in P4. He's got 73 points, so he's a handful of points behind Max. But then P5 only has 47 points. And yes, Charles is sitting on a DNF, and so that led to some points that were pushed down to other drivers. But you still have this massive gap between your top 4 and 5 through everyone else that will get met. Everybody will come back up and it'll all tighten up eventually. But right now, you have a clear set of 4 drivers who are ahead of the pack.
And we're only saying 4 because the gap clearly is at Charles, and George is just luckily sitting on the other side of this. Do I think George
Mercedes points?
Do I actually think he's a contender? Absolutely not. I think he's just lucked out with good qualifying. If you look, he does nothing in races. He qualifies really high and then he just sits there and lets people pass him by. That's
Or he just ends up in no man's land. It's
exactly it's one of the two. Yeah, he's not doing anything to impress, but he is getting those sneaky points. His rookie teammate is also getting sneaky points. I'm just waiting for Kimi, 1, to get on a podium this year because I totally think it's going to happen. Yes, and 2, to beat George and just hear what George has to say.
I mean, he'll be nice about it the first time. It's wait till he beats George the second time. That's when we're really gonna get the thoughts from Mr. George.
The other thing that I think is really interesting is where the constructors fight is going to be this season. So, if we're talking logically, right? We're Ferrari's out there, Red Bull's out there, McLaren's out there. But they're not. It's actually McLaren, Mercedes, because Mercedes gets the sneaky points. I think it's really telling how much you need a second driver, though, because if you 100%, look at it, 100%, yes, Charles is driving as good as he can in the Ferrari right now. Max is out there winning, getting on podiums, doing really well. But then you have, had Lawson, who wasn't doing anything. Yuki, unfortunately, has gotten 1 point this season so far for Red Bull. Ferrari, Lewis has been there, but he's been, for the most part, absent, except for his China sprint win, which was great for them. But then you have McLaren and Mercedes, who constantly have 2 drivers getting points. Are Mercedes getting on the podium every single weekend? No, but they're both getting, I would say, upper points.
Right,
which is adding to the total. That's how that works.
And that's exactly what you want. And so, fortunately for Red Bull, Red Bull could not help themselves last year. There is nothing Checo could do to move further up in the standings. Fortunately, Yuki is going to Silverstone in this between week, since we're going to have a week off between Saudi Arabia and Miami. So he's going to be testing the the dominant champion RB19 to get some more reps and get more familiar with the Red Bull car and the Red Bull setup. And we talked about this with Franco Colapinto in Monza with the Alpine. So he'll be doing a TPCA testing of previous cars that will... It's not perfect, but it will get him more time in the Red Bull, which is exactly what he's going to need going into Miami and going into the next stretch. But to Yuki's credit, before he crashed, he started in the top 8, which would have put both Red Bulls in the positions of getting points.
Exactly.
It's just we need to get both Red Bulls into the positions where they're fighting with the Mercedes, because I really think that Red Bull could be in a position to battle Mercedes for P2 in the championship.
Oh, I completely agree. They just have to get Yuki around, but he's had
5 minutes,
a handful of free practices, and then race it. He hasn't had a ton of time, so I think getting him into Silverstone is a really good idea.
Yeah. So they're gonna do everything within the rules to give Yuki more reps in the Red Bull specifically, compared to just a Red Bull family car of the V-Carb Racing Bulls. So it will be very interesting to see what's to come from them. And then after Ferrari in the constructor standings, you have this massive drop off to literally everyone else. P5, you need 25 points to be in P5 in the constructors championship right now.
I think you're talking about Williams.
Oh, we are talking about our friends at Williams.
I am so back on the Williams train. I haven't left the Williams train, but yeah, they had a great showing. I think, we were talking about this while we were watching the race. You could not ask for a better teammate. Than Carlos Sainz. He is so gung-ho to get team points, to, drop back to help Alex with DRS, to make sure that they, block Hadjar from passing and overtaking. I just think it's so great. They moved up, so they passed Haas now. So they did jump from P6 to P5 in the constructors. I think
and they're going to be going back and forth all year.
They will. Well, who knows with Haas. But yeah, they most likely will. But I still think a P5 finish for Williams is a huge win. I think that's a huge win for them. I think that they'll be happy with it. They've already scored their last several seasons. So I really think this is a positive for them. They got double points. I'm happy. I'm excited.
This was massive and we saw Carlos do this. Most notably, Carlos has done this before, but most notably, Carlos did this in Singapore in 2023 when Carlos got the one non-Red Bull win of the year, where he dropped back to give Lando DRS to protect his position, both of their positions from the Mercedes, because both Mercedes were coming, and then George crashed and didn't matter anyway. But I figured you'd be really happy to sprinkle in that little bit.
Never forget.
But the way that Carlos, is able to navigate that, and he was in a position to do it, and he's like, "Come on, Alex, let's get you DRS," so that kind of making a DRS train on purpose is what that was. Where Hadjar had DRS on Alex needed the DRS so that he can maintain, because if you have 5 drivers all with DRS, then they all have DRS, they're all going to have the same advantage, so you don't get any help. DRS really helps if the guy in front of you doesn't have it. So that's
but when the guy in front of you doesn't have it and it's your teammate, you're obviously not going to overtake, because then he could also overtake Carlos. So it worked out and it played out well. But no, I mean, the way that Carlos thinks while he's in the car and the strategy mind he can have while he's in the car, I think is so invaluable to a team. He was calling his own strategy at Ferrari. For years. And, we all have seen the million clips of him telling James what to do in Australia. And I just think he's such a great teammate. He is all in for this whole team environment. And I think it probably makes a difference because he's not competing for a driver's championship. Right. But I still think it's good, that he's there as a team member. But I think that's what James was looking for, having a true teammate for Alex Albon and having a team of drivers competing for constructors championships. Because you could have 2 drivers doing completely average and still be up in the conversation a la Mercedes this year. So I think that's the angle they're taking. But
it's I remember in this season of Drive to Survive, when they did the Williams episode, James Vowles was talking about P8 in the Constructors Championship would be a coup for Williams last year. They didn't get it, but that's what they were aiming for, P8. Right. They're not aiming for P8 anymore. They're aiming for P5. And with the way that we're going to see this where Williams will have a good weekend, Haas will have a good weekend. We're probably not going to see them both having good weekends at the same time, but we're going to see them going back and forth throughout the entire season. And this will be another one of those, standings decisions that is decided late alongside what we're going to have at the front of the grid and the front of the standings.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, I'm glad that we talked about everything besides the race. But like there was nothing
to talk about because it's not a good race. Like
I know,
and it's not like I want to see the Al Qadiyah track because I think that they should just leave Saudi Arabia, period. But maybe the Al Qadiyah track would be more exciting than this. Like this track is too long. Like it's too long of a track.
It is very long. It is very long. But 365 more days until we have to race there again. So
thank goodness we're over it. I don't have to think about this Saudi Arabia anymore. Yay.
Okay, well, let's leave this in the dust and run through our predictions quickly, and then we can talk our favorite thing, which is F1 Academy. So, did pick up some points this weekend, which is exciting.
You did!
Woo! Go team! So for our predictions for pole, Kathryn and I both picked Oscar. Unfortunately, we were not right.
But Oscar
Max
had been the safe bet. And then
Oscar was a safe bet, and based off of how everyone else was driving, I was like, no, I mean, I wouldn't have predicted
the other option is Lando right now. And I kind of touched on this earlier, but it's so funny to me. Like everybody's like, the Red Bull is bad. The Red Bull is slow. The Red Bull does not have pace. And then Max, what does he do? He puts the Red Bull on pole. He finishes P2. Like it's so funny to me how, and like, obviously there are some issues that they're correct about, but clearly there are issues that they're, that with their phenom savant of a driver, they're able to overcome.
I want to see Max drive like this hour and see what happens.
Well, you know what Lance Stroll said. He'll set a record in Q1 exits.
I know. Okay, so then for podium, we both really took a leap this week, and we're like, okay, George keeps hitting the podium, so let's put George on our podium. And what do you know? He's not on the podium. So that's the last time I ever throw faith behind George.
I was so close.
I know. Podium was Oscar, Max, Charles. You had Oscar, George. Charles. And I had Oscar, Lando, George. So, LOL. But thank you, Carlos Sainz, for keeping Isaac Hadjar in P10 because that was my P10 pick. So I got 3 points this weekend. Kathryn had Fernando, which Fernando still has no points, but that's okay. Nope. So if you're keeping track with us, that does mean that I have now taken the lead with 4 points, and Kathryn has 2. So, yay! But anything can change in one weekend. We'll have a lot of points next weekend for Miami because it's a sprint weekend. God bless, we can get something there. But yeah, so then for funsies, we do biggest surprise and who's going to do a dumb. So Kathryn, you said that it was going to be a big bounce back weekend for Red Bull. I think Max getting pole and also getting P2, I say that was a good comeback. I said
I think so.
And also before the race, like Yuki just qualifying P8, I think that's leaps and bounds above where they were 2 or 3 weekends ago.
Or last week.
Yeah, even last week.
So Bahrain was not a track that suited them. Oh no.
Not every not every track is going to suit
every car.
Yeah, words. And then I, I'm really throwing my hope behind the rookies. I said that 3 rookies were going to score. Unfortunately, only 2 did. Kimmy and Isaac, who are really pulling away as the rookies to watch. So I don't think Kimmy's getting enough credit. And I know this is so funny because we talked so much shit about him. And I was so convinced that he was going to suck. And I was like, Toto, you're going to eat your shorts. This was such a bad move. Why is Carlos Sainz not driving for you? But yeah, I'm actually very impressed. I don't think he's getting enough recognition. I think because he's just doing so well, it's just like, oh yeah, of course Kimmy's in, P5 or whatever. But it's also exciting to see Isaac up there as well. So
yeah, okay, Isaac is doing his job. He is racing the car. He is settling into the driver program. I'm so excited. But yeah, we were so wrong about Kimmy. We know we were wrong about Kimmy, and you know what? We will eat our words.
It's okay.
Very publicly. We are doing it.
So then who's going to do a dumb? So you said Ollie. He didn't crash, but he didn't necessarily have a good weekend either. But again, I'm going to give the rookie a little grace, right? This is just
there was
he's getting
really
his feet
no
wet.
way he was going to be able to beat his last appearance in Saudi Arabia. There was
Well, no, he was in a Ferrari. That was good.
I mean, he was in a Ferrari. Carlos was getting his appendix out. Like, everything about last year in Saudi Arabia, like I said, last year in Saudi Arabia was like an exception, not the norm to the Saudi Arabia race. So Ollie couldn't beat that, and unfortunately, Ollie and Esteban both had issues that kept them out of the points. So it wasn't great. I wouldn't say it's the dumbest, but he didn't show out this weekend.
Yeah. Okay, and then I said it's just gonna be a bad racing weekend, which, like, again, I think we got interesting things that came out of the weekend, but it wasn't like the race itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I think it was a push. I couldn't think of one just because I was like, I don't think anyone's gonna have a bad weekend. And honestly, I think the
most
fans
people
had the worst
didn't.
weekend. I think we had the bad experience just having to watch the race, but I don't think anyone did poorly. Like, yeah, Yuki and Pierre Gasly like got into a crash the first sector, but
which also I was convinced that was a Williams. I was
so
baffled until I realized that was
Carlos Sainz.
I really did.
Yeah,
I'm glad it wasn't, but
Same.
I saw a blue car and my brain said Williams. I did not see the pink.
But yeah, no, I think it was just like a very average weekend, which I was really upset about. But something exciting will happen in Miami. It has to.
Yes, so. Agreed.
Okay, so before we cut from the pod, we can't skip our F1 Academy update. So Kathryn, give us an update, but before you do, I'm curious, because this is now our second racing weekend, and I know something that like we've harped on for sprints and also for F1 Academy this year, because they recently brought it back, reverse grid. Like, is this working? Is it something we like? Do we think it's dumb? That this is like my biggest curiosity of the weekend, because Kathryn has more time than I do, so she gets to actually watch these races. I get the lovely recap like all of you do, but this has been a burning question of like, is this actually working? Because I think it's interesting, and it's always like a topic of, do we bring it to, F1? Do we bring it to the other support series? Is it working? What are your thoughts?
Is it the answer to should it be brought to Formula One in a way to fix the sprint? The answer is no. The sprint races are we have talked about sprint races and
we'll never
fix
issues. Sprint races.
Sprint races will never be fixed. But for F1 Academy, yes, and so yes, it's working.
Okay.
And yes, we are seeing we are seeing more opportunities for drivers who aren't just the pole sitters, and we are also seeing different pole sitters, which is something very new compared to last season, where we had maybe 2 or 3 different pole sitters for 14 races. But my problem this year with the way the F1 Academy race format is, I know it's like every year we come up with a problem, but right now my biggest issue is the fact that we have 2 races. They're both 13 laps long, but they're not worth the same amount of points. So you get so for race 1, that is the reverse grid race. You only get from 10 to 1, so only top 8 score in that race, but it's still 13 laps. Race 2 is 13 laps. The pole sitter from qualifying is starting on pole. You get the grid that you see, but that is F1 amount of points, like F1 race points. But they're the same
doesn't make sense
distance.
to me. I don't like that. You would think they would change the distances or something. Or just have them worth the same amount of points. Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's my current problem. I do like the fact that we see less points given for, over an entire race weekend, just because it's I feel like it is more meaningful compared to the last couple of years where you got the same amount of, like, 2 years ago, you got 25 points for winning. If you won 3 races, you're coming away from a weekend with 75 points. That's so many. Now you're coming out with 2 races, 35 if you win both races. So I think that's...
Which I don't think that's bad, but I think then you have like a true sprint and then an actual race. So like if you're capping it at 26, then I don't know how you want to split the difference, because I feel like 10 laps in a race is pointless, and like then you're just doing 16. It's essentially the same thing. But yeah, no, that is weird that they don't consider that or adjust it.
Yeah, so that's the next thing, because they fixed qualifying, because qualifying last year was terrible.
So dumb, yeah.
So this is the current thing, but I think if they fix this and adjust some race distances, whatever, and obviously they have only a certain amount of time that the track is available to them.
Right.
So that
they're a support race, and they have to like get off in time for the track to settle and everything to get switched over for F1. And and the other support races.
Yeah, so that is, if Susie Wolf, who is the managing director, is able to make that fix, then I think we have a great race weekend format, because I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of the reverse grid. We had a surprise winner out of race 1, so that was really, really exciting. And throughout this entire season, for 4 races, we have had 4 different race winners, and a bunch of different people on the podium instead of like the same 3 or 4 people compared to what we saw last year. So I think that they are really on the right track, especially for this season.
Okay, so what were some highlights from race 1 then? You said we had an unexpected winner. So who ended up winning race 1, and why was it unexpected?
Well, race 1, it was unexpected in the sense of like, because it was a reverse grid, this was the P2 position, Ella Lloyd, who is the new McLaren driver. And I do feel like it was very exciting for her. It was her first career win, and it was also McLaren's first win of the season, and also McLaren's first win since early on last year when Bianca Bustamante won for McLaren. And then Bianca, like her performance that season just kind of fell off a cliff, which was really unfortunate because Bianca is so talented. But Ella Lloyd, she's one of the new drivers this year, relatively new to single seater, managed to drive a phenomenal race, overtake on the first lap, held off Maya Voog, who was in the Ferrari for, half the race almost. And Maya Voog is a incredibly talented racer. She's one of the championship contenders for this season. So to be able to hold her off with, the amount of experience that Maya Voog has, that was a huge performance for her. And then in third, Alicia Pomalski, who won back in China, she held off Dorian Pon, who is also one of the contenders, to hold on to P3 for basically the entire race as well. So it was, we saw a lot of A, different names, and B, performance, really strong performances out of new drivers to the series.
Okay. I like how, like, in the reverse grid, you have all of that mix up. Like, and because it's more about the overtaking, because you have people who didn't qualify as well up at the front. But yeah, I think that's interesting. But then going to race 2, so this is qualifying in the actual qualifying order. How did that shake out? Because I know we have like 2 people who are kind of out in front. How did this pan out for those drivers?
So remember how on the opening lap of the Formula One race in Saudi Arabia, where Max Verstappen got pushed off and he took advantage? And yeah, that basically happened in race 2 of the F1 Academy, which for the record happened before the Formula One race. So Chloe Chambers, who is driving for Red Bull Ford, she was the Haas driver last year and is the most successful Haas driver in the history of Haas. Still want to throw that out there.
God bless her.
So she led from pole. She spent basically the entire time fighting off Maya Voog in that Ferrari, and they fought on lap 4, and Voog got pushed off track, and guess who got a 5-second penalty? So the entire race was really focused on how much of a gap was Chloe going to be able to build to, see what the impact of that 5-second penalty was going to be on. And for a while it was, you could probably still get away with a podium finish. Like you'll finish P3 probably. She managed to only lose 1 position. So she managed to get enough of a gap between her and Dorian Pon in the Mercedes, who was in P3. She managed to hold out a 5-second gap on like the last lap. She was driving like a quali speed lap and managed to get a 6/100th of a distance between her and Pon in order to hold on to P2 so that she didn't drop all the way down to P3 or at worst out of the podium positions entirely.
Well, good for her. Sounds like she had quite a drive.
Yeah, it was quite the performance from Chambers. Obviously, she would, and even if she hadn't had the penalty from pushing Weug off, Weug was right on her. Like she was within half a second the entire race. There's no DRS in F1 Academy, so it's all about like, how are you able to get that overtake with your skills and your ability to brake and outbrake your opponent? So it was a very exciting, very clean race. I said that earlier, but like this weekend compared to the last round was so much cleaner than what we saw, which is exactly what we want.
Which makes sense too. Like it's their second weekend, so like they have a little bit more experience this season. So
and they also tested here, so everyone was familiar with the track compared to coming into China, where half the grid had never driven there before outside of practice and qualifying.
Well, have we seen a shakeup here with constructors, or not constructors because we don't care about constructors? Have we seen them mix up with drivers' standings like we have in F1? Okay, so where are we at with the drivers' standings then for Academy?
Yeah, so Maya Weug has overtaken Dorian Pon for the lead in the championship. I'm pretty sure this is her first championship lead in her F1 Academy career. She now has 59 points to Pon's 52. Pon had a strong weekend, but not a strong enough weekend to maintain her lead in the championship, because she missed one of the podiums, and you really can see that it's not just Pon and Weug and pulling as it was last year. Now it's Pon and Weug. Chambers, like Chloe Chambers, is in P3 in the championship. She has 45 points. She is on a tear this season. Her improvement from last year to this year is stunning. And then you have Alicia Pomalski in fourth. She just joined F1 Academy. She's just started her single-seater career. She's got 36 points. And in P5 is Alba Larson, who is one of the youngest on the grid. She's driving the Tommy Hilfiger car that we love so much. She's just behind Pomalski. I think she's got 32 points right now. And so they're like, all five of these drivers, maybe all four, outside of Larson, are contenders right now for the championship. And it's going to be really exciting to see, especially as we continue these next, few races, to see who's getting points and where, and what we're going to come into once we get towards Vegas, which is going to be their, final race of the season.
Yeah. And so their next race is Miami, correct?
Yes. Yeah, so we'll see them in 2 weeks.
Yes, in Miami. Well, thank you for the update. Love, as always. I need to carve out time to actually sit down and watch these. Maybe I'll watch them for Miami.
I would recommend it.
Better timing.
Also that, yes, the Miami races will be obviously they'll be in the mornings, but the F1 race, it's for races where it's good for us to watch on the western half of the United States / the world. It's a lot easier to watch F1 Academy live compared to when it's in Saudi Arabia and the races at 5:00 in the morning. And I'll do that for F1, but I'm not going to do that for F1 Academy.
No, me neither.
Not yet.
No offense, girls, but
yeah,
I'm catching some Z's at that time.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, before we leave, I do have my F1, or not my F. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk, and I don't know why. I haven't actually. No, I've worked out twice today, so I am a little exhausted.
Bingo.
But yeah. So off track moment. So we're going way off track, and even a little bit before. But my off track moment, and I don't even care what anyone says about this, is Susie Wolf's vacation pictures.
I knew it.
Not even just this weekend, of every single vacation they take, and she's always like, "Don't worry, I asked permission to post these." They are the cutest couple ever. They're couple goals. I am obsessed. But yeah, Toto just casually walking out of the ocean, and oh my god, it was great. But I love their vacations. They also just go on really cool vacations. So yeah anytime they go on a trip before a weekend, it's always, and also it's just nice to see that Toto's getting away from work. The guy works too much. He's way too stressed out. I think this is good for him.
Yes, and also over the last couple of years, Toto has started,
taking a step away.
Taking a step, not a step away, but he's not going to as many races as he doesn't go to the East Asia races or all of them as much as he used to. He used to be like, the Christian Horner type who's there every week. And so Toto will watch from base, and like he'll still be available on radio. Like, you can radio Toto from anywhere in the world.
And which means Toto can radio you as well.
Exactly. So it's not like he's like gone, but if you do want like behind the scenes of, what's going on in Toto's world, you should follow Susie Wolf on social media, but you should also follow her anyway because she's the managing director of F1 Academy and one of the like, top names in motorsport. So follow her anyway.
Yeah.
But also for the Toto bits.
Okay. So up next we have Miami, which will be out. We're taking the rest of the week off, so this will be out before Miami because we have a week break.
It'll be out on the Thursday before Miami, like normal.
Yes. Okay. Said better than I did. Words are hard for me.
Which is a week, not this week, but next
week. So we'll have that episode out next week. I'm just going to put it out there. I think I'm excited for Miami this year.
Why could we be excited about Miami for this year?
I mean, it's a sprint weekend.
Obviously, we know what our opinions are on sprint weekends.
And we hate sprint weekends, but like I feel, Kevin, I don't know, I just feel like maybe I'm excited for Miami.
There's something about it. There's something about some of the mail that I've been getting.
This specific weekend, I think I'm excited for Miami.
Yeah, there's something about it. I think we might be able to tell you more going into the episode next week, going into the weekend. But yeah, we have lots of things to say. So don't forget to give us a follow. Get excited. Follow us on Instagram at @going.off.track. There will be lots of stuff there. There's lots of stuff here on the YouTube. Follow us everywhere. And yeah.
That's it for Saudi Arabia. Ta-ta for now. Thanks for going off track with us, guys.